The country of Haiti is under a state of emergency tonight after President Jovenel Moise was assassinated early this morning. He had been in office for 4 years. His wife, Martine, was wounded in the brazen attack at their home on the outskirts of the capital, Port-au-Prince. Tonight, she has been airlifted to Miami for treatment. Yamiche Alcindor begins our coverage.
Haiti's president assassinated. The island nation in a state of shock.
We live in this area close to the president. Even when we have problems with him, we can't imagine that they would kill him like this.
Hours after President Jovenel Moise was murdered in his own home, the streets of Port-au-Prince were uncharacteristically quiet. Outside the president's private residence and the scene of the crime lay bullet casings. Haiti's First Lady, Martine Moise, was wounded in the attack and remains hospitalized. In a video reportedly shot at the scene, someone says the assassins are with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. But Haitian ambassador to the U.S., Bochit Edmond, said the DEA was not involved. Instead, he blamed mercenaries who spoke English and Spanish.
It seems that this horrible act was carried out by well-trained professional killers, commandos.
The Haitian government closed the airport in Port-au-Prince, so Edmond said the assassins likely escaped by land into the neighboring Dominican Republic or by sea. President Biden said the United States was ready to assist in the aftermath of the shooting. He responded to my question on the situation on the White House lawn. What's your reaction, Mr. President, to the Haitian president being assassinated?
You need a lot more information, but it's very worrisome about the state of Haiti.
Moise was a polarizing president. In the last few months, his actions sparked massive protests around the country. During his term, gang violence and kidnappings skyrocketed. UNICEF reported that armed gangs control about a third of Port-au-Prince. And since the violence spiked last September, more than 18,000 people have fled their homes. Moise was elected in 2016, but didn't take office until the following year. He said his 5-year term was supposed to end in 2022. But his critics, including human rights groups and clergy members, insisted that his term was up this past February. Earlier this year, he dissolved parliament, saying most lawmakers' terms had ended. He also forced 3 Supreme Court justices into early retirement. Moise pursued sweeping constitutional changes that would increase presidential power. He planned to vote on a referendum as well as his replacement in September. That election is in flux. The United States backed Moise's timeline, but U.S. officials also criticized what they called his unchecked presidential power.
This situation calls into question the core precepts of Haiti's democracy.
But Haitian human rights activists like Pierre Espérance opposed the U.S. backing Moise, as Espérance told us in March.
The people of Haiti and the Haitian community in the United States are very disappointed by the Biden administration's politics.
Now interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph is the country's de facto leader. Earlier today, Joseph called into a news program.
I call for calm of the population. The situation of the country is already under control.
Moise named Joseph his 6th prime minister in April. But Moise had intended for a 7th, Ariel Henry, to replace him. He was supposed to be sworn in today. For more on the assassination of President Moise and the shockwave that it sent through Haiti, I'm joined by Robert Faton. He's a professor of government and foreign affairs at the University of Virginia. He has written extensively on Haiti throughout the years. He joins me from Charlottesville, Virginia. Professor Faton, thank you so much for being here. Haiti has really been in a constitutional crisis for several months now. People on the ground say it's hit a new rock bottom. But talk about the gravity of the last 24 hours and the difference now that the president has been murdered.
Well, this is a shocking event in the history of Haiti. The last assassination of a president was in 1915. So this is not the usual pattern at all. We've had coups, we've had attempted coups, we've had obviously very nasty dictators who've killed a lot of people. But that, especially given that it was, as far as we know, an armed attack by foreign mercenaries, it's really a different pattern. And it's difficult to understand why that would have happened and who would benefit from it. It is really something that is out of the ordinary. It's truly an extraordinary event. So we are facing a de facto government, a government that has taken charge, has instituted, as you probably know, a state of siege, which is really the ultimate type of governmental imposition of order. But it remains to be seen if that state of siege can keep the country without significant disorder and a descent into chaos.
And how concerned are you about Haiti hitting an even lower rock bottom and gangs possibly trying to benefit from this situation?
This is
welcome to the Gilchrist experience. As you know, this is the motivating. This is the main reason why most Haitians are coming to America, trying to get away from the havoc of Haiti. Haiti. Man, I've been away. But I don't know why we're smiling and laughing, but I'm happy to be alive, and to see all the misery in the world is depressing, especially this Haitian situation. You can see the kidnapping last week of 17 Americans, or 16 Americans and one Canadian, and this is the result of the assassination of a president by not Haitians. Most of the assassins were foreigners, and the Haitians thought it was the DEA, right. Drug Administration, the cops on the beat for the tracking drugs. And because Haiti is a spot for transporting drugs from South America, right?
Yep.
Isn't it?
It's like every country seems to be a spot for transporting
especially Caribbean islands.
Yeah, but they
Haiti
did
is
shout out,
noted for that?
DEA.
Is Haiti noted for that?
I don't know for sure, but drugs are brought through the Caribbean islands, especially Jamaica and other
why
places.
Would the Haitians believe that the president was assassinated by the Drug Administration?
Well, they said it's the DEA. Everybody stay indoors, stay away, blah, blah, blah. And you heard it on the video. The guy was saying, this is the DEA, stay in your homes.
But the ambassador said it wasn't a DEA.
It wasn't, and it definitely wasn't. The United States said we had no agents down there working.
Well, aren't the Colombians the drug transporters?
Yeah, some of the gentlemen were former military dudes from the U.S., and they were hired mercenaries.
Two.
Yeah.
Two of them.
Two.
Yeah.
Out of the 16 or 17?
I'm not sure the exact number, but.
Oh no, I'm thinking of the.
Now that they got them in custody fairly quickly, and the question was, well, why?
Yeah.
Who hired these foreigners to come into Haiti?
Right. Yeah, obviously paid.
Speaking in Spanish, and English. They don't speak patois. And who was financing it? There was a gentleman from the United States that was also involved, who was supposed to be helping to finance it, but for what end was this assassination? Haiti has had a long history of problems within their leadership, and it's not just upon the Haitian people. It's upon the United States, it's upon France. From the time that Haiti whipped the French, they've been put on a doo-doo list by the Europeans and by the United States. In the 1920s, the U.S. went into Haiti and rifled their treasury and took all the gold out of Haiti. And it went to Citibank here in New York. So,
what year was that?
I think it was 1922.
Oh, okay.
So our country has been complicit with other countries in subjugating black people in the Caribbean, and especially in Haiti because of how Haiti whipped the French so long ago. And getting their emancipation from the Europeans as a colony, they were the first to do it in the Western Hemisphere.
Right.
And they've held that against them ever since. No, I think it was before 1812. I don't know the exact date, but the conditions in Haiti have been perpetuated by European involvement. The Clintons have a hand in Haiti. From the time of the earthquake, not this most recent one, but the one 8 years ago, whenever that was, Hillary Clinton's brother is down there. The name Clinton is despised in the island of Haiti.
What about the rice?
Right, Clinton, right, back in the 90s,
Right.
Clinton dropped the price of rice to bankrupt the Haitian economy.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Because rice was their #1 export, and that was Bill Clinton that did that.
They went from exporting rice to importing rice.
Right, right, and
And,
it's
they
like
had
what
the
the
best
British
rice.
did. Yeah, it's like what the British did with the potatoes when they bought up the Irish potatoes from the Irish, and then turned around and sold them back to the Irish at 3 times the price because they were starving.
It's called capitalism.
Hey, yeah, inhumane capitalism at that. But, you know, we have to constantly look back upon history and see what led to these events. Things don't just happen in a vacuum. There are things that lead up, and then you have the
This
explosion.
assassination, supposedly the prime minister was behind it? Did you hear that?
You mean the current sitting prime minister?
Yes. The one that's taken over.
No, I didn't get that.
You didn't hear that?
I haven't been locked in on this particular story.
I think it's just incredible just to see the history of Haiti and how the U.S. depended on Haiti for its, like, when it was in developing. Like, the Haitians were essential warriors when we were fighting against the British for the Revolutionary War. They gave us support. The Haitian people, which I think is important to talk about it from a position of strength, because they have been such strong freedom fighters. They helped to combat Napoleon while we were doing the Louisiana Purchase. The
Right.
Haitian people did that. So
Right.
I think we kind of owe a debt to Haiti. You know, the refugee.
You might explain that Louisiana Purchase.
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
half of America.
Yeah, I mean,
You're right.
what and you know, the Haitian people were there for America. So I think we have a responsibility. We have the Refugee Act of 1980. You know, there's a lot of political turmoil. We should not be turning them back. We should open our doors broadly to them, because I think if it was the other way around and Haiti was in America's shoes, I think Haiti would be a lot more humane. I think we need to think in that way.
Do you think it's because they're black people?
Yeah, man.
Oh, how could you say that?
I mean, look what happened in Cuba, right? I mean,
Thank you. That's where I was going.
Yeah, go ahead. You got it,
You know,
Graham.
No, you know the story. I'm gonna give you the mic. I'm gonna give you the mic.
No, that's you, man. I haven't seen you in a while.
We had. It's good to be back. It's
Yeah.
good to be back in the studio. We look at the situation, the freedom fighters in Central America, Che Guevara, Fidel Castro. Most people don't even know the vocation of Che Guevara.
He's a doctor.
He was a medical doctor, right? He wasn't some knucklehead running around with a gun. He was a medical doctor.
Yeah.
Fidel Castro, these were men that cared about their countries.
Yeah.
And they were concerned about how the U.S. was inflicting racism, capitalism, and other isms in the minds of the people in order to gain control of their countries. And the U.S. has done this.
Wasn't that the mafia who was behind
Well, we're
all
going to
that?
come to that too. The mafia in Cuba. You know, when Batista was finally ousted, who was a puppet for the U.S. in Cuba, they looked at Fidel. He had been educated here. They said, look, we're going to help you out. We're going to hook you up. And yeah. So once he got in, he told the U.S., get your stuff and get out. He told them, go to hell. U.S. elected officials were going to Cuba, orchestrating business deals,
Yeah.
some legal, some illegal, in Cuba, and then hop on a flight and come home for dinner. It's only 90 miles away.
Right.
And they could not be prosecuted because there were no laws in place at that time to prosecute you for committing these crimes outside of the country. So Fidel told them, you know, the Bay of Pigs was launched from Grand Turk and the Turks and Caicos Islands, but that incident was backed up by the mafia.
Yeah.
So you had John F. Kennedy, U.S. military, the mafia working hand in hand to overthrow Cuba. Why? Because the mafia had a hand in Cuba. The casinos, prostitution, and other things that were going on, they were working hand in hand with the U.S. government.
The drugs.
And the drugs. So Fidel, when he took over, he told them, get your stuff and go to hell. Get your prostitutes, your drugs, your mafia, take all that stuff and get out of here. And the thing is that what they were telling the Cubans was that, all right, you're a white Cuban and he's a Moreno.
That's right.
So they were having the fair-skinned Cubans believe that they were better than the dark-skinned Cubans. And the dark-skinned Cubans could only sweep the street, clean the toilets, and be subjugated the same way they corrupted this place. So Fidel made it very clear. There are no white Cubanos. There are only Cubanos. And when he came here in 1959, he refused to go to the Waldorf Astoria. He went to the Teresa Hotel on 125th Street.
And that's where he met Malcolm, right?
I believe Malcolm met him when he was up there, And he said, I want to be with my people, all right? So the interjection of the white politic in Central and South America was only for greed, profit, at the expense of other people. Hanes Underwear had their factories down there. They're hated because they don't pay the people a decent wage. The Clintons, I understand, have bought up a lot of property in Haiti since the first earthquake, and they're despised also. You ask anybody from Haiti, they'll spit on the name if they see Clinton. All right, and this was going on before she ran for president. There's so much about the family, and people are not doing their homework and their research to know how has the U.S. had a hand in the demise of various countries. And it's what we have always done and are still doing. Gaddafi in Libya, that never should have happened. In Libya, when you got married, Gaddafi gave you, I think it was $5,000. He gave the bride and groom $5,000. Every bride and groom got $5,000. That was to get you started on your way. He built homes and provided homes for people. Education was free. Everything between Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi and some of the other leaders, even going back to the 50s in Persia, people had a better standard of living than after the U.S. got involved and messed everything up for them. So,
with this integration thing.
Integration?
Integration.
Of?
What did I say?
Integration?
Integration. Migration.
Oh, you mean the migration?
No.
The migration.
The migration. Oh.
Of the people.
What has happened to
You're talking about the movement of the
people coming here from foreign countries.
Right.
They're called immigrants.
I mean, like.
Oh, but let me just say this last thing with Cuba, that it was the fair-skinned Cubans that the U.S. was bringing in here.
Well, that's a reflection of America.
And they let the Haitians die, let them drown in the ocean, and that's what was happening.
How do we correct the problem? What I'm getting at.
That's
now,
a great
we got a halfway decent president in there that wants to do good because we help him get in there. Now, he owes us. He said he had our backs. Now, what can he do to make people happy?
I think what's really powerful about the Haitian people and Latin America in general is that we're, due to some actions, we're a lot more connected to Latin America as compared to the Middle East. So they're much more able to accept our culture, our ideas. There's kind of a shared feeling because we're in the same continent, as compared to when we're interacting with the Middle East. And we've funded Haiti and other Latin American countries despite their human rights abuses towards women, towards people of color. And I think if we try I know it's a really problematic argument, but the response is not to say, okay, we're just gonna leave Haiti alone to its own devices. It's not a good response, because it's going to only get worse. It's going to be a vacuum. We have to figure out a way to use soft power, not hard power with the military, soft power through culture, through values, through a shared respect with the Haitian people, to talk about what does a free-flowing democracy look like. Every time.
We're not a
Yeah.
shiny example of it today.
Yeah,
are we?
no,
Not at all.
and you see, that's the thing, right? The first
can't brag
sign,
about that.
the first sign of decay within a society is when, especially a democratic society, people can't trust the vote, and that's what's happening in Haiti.
Well, that's by the con man. The con man.
Yeah, go ahead.
The creative New Yorker.
Oh, no, but I mean, this has been the issue when
all this
yeah,
reaction to what's happening in America
Yeah.
is Trump gave us the worst of America can be.
but
And we know we've got bad
Yes, I'm sorry.
bad blood, but we try to live by the Constitution. We, as black people, try to play it fair. And we expect to be dealt fair, since they're preaching that we're a democracy.
Yeah.
And it's always been hypocrisy, as Malcolm was saying.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
But what I'm saying is like,
How do we get away
look
from
at
hypocrisy?
Yeah.
That's
So what I'm
talking
saying,
about.
so I wasn't referring to the U.S. Real. I referring about Haiti. But look
Yeah.
at how strong the U.S. is, and just that little crack in our democracy has brought us back so much. So imagine a place that has basically no infrastructure, and when they don't trust their vote matters, look at what's happening. So I think we need to do our best to create infrastructure and structures in place to allow free-flowing votes, secure votes within their country. If we do that and help them feel they're powerful enough, then we can take a step back. But I just feel like if we take a step back after all the stuff that we've done to them, and it's going to be like what happened through Joe Biden's actions at this point. It's creating chaos.
I think we got to clean up our own house before we start preaching again.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a struggle.
So are you saying that we shouldn't do anything with the Haitian
No,
people?
we've got to do something.
So what do you think should be done then?
We have to let some Haitians in.
So the response is like the Refugee Act, allowing all the refugees to come
We
through.
have to let them in.
But
'Cause
what about
if
their,
anybody deserves
It's true.
to come to America, it's the Haitians.
But what do we do with the Haitians
With
that
Haiti.
can't leave? Right? They make such a long trek that takes sometimes years. So dangerous unless they're sold into sex slaves.
They don't
slavery.
want to send in the army or navy, or they don't want to send any forces in there. That would just
Create
destroy
worse.
everything.
See, one of the serious problems is the level of corruption, because it's a crab in a barrel existence
Exactly.
there.
Yeah.
So a man behaves out of the way that he thinks. So you got to transform the thinking of the people in order to change the behavior of the society.
Truth.
How do you do that in
And
Haiti?
that's the difficult part, because we've spent so many centuries breaking these people.
And how
You,
about
you,
the-
you remember in the Bible when Israel came out of Egypt,
Wait a-
they kept
wait a-
complaining to Moses, oh, we should go back to Egypt because we
Aren't
were
the
better off in
Haitians
Egypt.
responsible for some of this stuff?
I'm sorry?
Why is it always? I mean, can't be all our fault.
No, it's
You
not.
had Papa
no,
Doc,
no.
and you had this.
What I'm saying,
You
Papa
had the
Doc
black on black
Duvalier,
crime in Haiti.
Duvalier, Baby Doc. You got to
Yeah.
remember, all of these
They were installed.
dictators
Yeah.
were supported. They were they got financial aid from the U.S.
That's the only way
and
you
other
could keep
countries,
peace.
but these were the wrong people.
Exactly.
But was it our choosing?
So
We have a hand in who gets the spot.
Who we pay off? Well, this happens in every country.
well, when it
I
happened
mean,
in
whenever we're involved, we pay off the guy who can keep the peace.
We
But
only
Mr.
do
but
what's
Mr.
good for us.
but
We
Mr.
don't do anything
but
that's good for
that's
them.
But Mr. Gilchrist, think
what
about
about the Haitians doing something for
it.
themselves?
Okay, but look at it like this: when Russia did that to us with Donald Trump, we've been in an uproar. We're like, this is a violation of everything we hold dear.
Exactly
But now
right.
that we've done it to them, we're like, what are they gonna do?
Look
I
at-
mean, that doesn't seem fair.
I love the way you put it. Look
Yeah.
what Russia did to America.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't
I
believe
fell into
that.
the trap.
But they
But
did it.
that was
They
a
did it.
calculation by Putin. 'Cause
Yeah.
Putin hated Hillary more than anybody.
Yeah, even if like the votes, whatever. But like the fact that there was interference in our election, we feel so violated. We're like, how could this happen to us? we do it. Everybody else, we're like,
Yeah.
well, it's for democracy.
Yeah,
You reap what you sow.
that's
Okay.
right. You're right.
Chicken's coming home
what
to
you
roost.
sow, you reap.
No, I'm joking, but it's true. So we got to
Of course
really.
it is.
So I think we all have to
So
kind of.
it's up to
yeah.
us as the victims of all this,
Yeah.
black people here in America, black Americans, to solve the problem of America.
I think it's.
But we have to follow
yeah.
the rules to the T and show the hypocrisy and change everybody's frame of mind. You said you got to change the mindset.
Yeah.
We have to change our own mindset,
Our own mindset too.
Yeah.
before we can make any influences on
true.
the planet anymore. And we have to rid ourselves of this Trump disease.
Well, I think
You
it's
got to
before
remember,
Trump, though,
74 million people voted for this
That's-
man.
But you know, Mr.
Human, if
but
we
you know,
can call him a
Yeah,
human.
74 million people did vote for him, but that was in a majority of America. And I think that's something to note. You know, we have the Electoral College, which really gives voice to people. It's not representative of our democracy, you know?
No, it may,
It's not a democracy.
Look,
This
what
is a
kind of-
republic.
what kind
But
of sane person would vote for Trump in 2020?
I think sometimes desperation says a
Now,
lot.
but Winston, let's remember now, I have people I talk to across the country, and and they're like talking about Trump, and I said, listen, you don't know this guy. We know this guy.
Yeah, New Yorkers know.
And they're like, what?
That's right.
And I told them about some of the things he's done. They're like, what? I said, yeah, you don't know about this.
Yeah.
This guy's bad news. He was bad news 30 years ago. So
His first
people
deal.
have awakened to who he is. The knuckleheads are still running around there talking about the vote and they stole it and this and that. I'm sure that with the next election, a number of those people who voted for him in 20, not knowing the element that was in this guy, will not be voting for him, even if he's able to run again. If he's not in prison and he's not indicted and he's not dead, I mean, if he runs, there are people that voted for him in 16. 16? No, in 20.
Yeah, 2016.
In 20.
2016.
That will not vote for him in the next election in 24. They will not.
Yeah.
They
How
were
did I-
duped once, and they're not going to be duped again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that
he's-
number of 74 million was a big number. It's shocking, but I don't see him getting that number again.
Yeah.
And that is the thing. Even though they're going after the vote, trying to restrict people with regard, and the Attorney General better get off of his behind and start dealing with some of these states. When the Supreme Court said it was no longer necessary for those states of the old Confederacy to be monitored, that opened the floodgate. It wasn't Donald Trump. It wasn't Donald Trump at all. The Supreme Court said 5 years ago that we don't need this anymore. And as a result, you see now they're telling people, well, the voting rights and everything has changed. So it is between the Supreme Court, which preceded Donald Trump, but that opened the door. They no longer need to be under the review of the federal government. If this Attorney General doesn't wake up and start dealing with these individual states and the implementation of these restrictive laws,
That's what he's doing.
all right, it's going to be a nightmare.
That's exactly what he's doing.
I agree. I mean,
That's exactly what he's doing. You see this, he popped up and busted this Russian gangster. And he's a direct, that's Putin's man.
Yeah, but he ain't got nothing
He
to
was
do with the voting
laundering-
rights. He had not, that guy, that was the manipulation with the election.
The voting
and
rights
with,
comes in ties with how they've disrupted our economy and disrupted our voting rights. And also, it's all the Russians behind this.
so that's okay. I've been wondering, I said, what is my, like, because I feel like I agree with Mr. Gilchrist, but there are some moments where I disagree. And I think, but most of the time I agree, I'm not gonna lie. But I think the part where I
have to.
disagree is like, is it all about the Russians? I don't think it is. I think what it is the Russians were able to see what we all see, is that you can really exploit the racial issue in America.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? They did. I don't think they went in the ballot box and turned nothing around. I think they just straight up lied to Americans and also showed them their
Disrupted-
division, and that's what happened.
Right. Oh, the
Disrupted our
browning of
economy
America.
by causing almost a civil war.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't
Let
want
them destroy themselves.
Where did that come from?
people. What is this?
Misinformation, propaganda.
Right.
That's what Russians are famous for. Putin
That's
in
what we're
particular.
famous for. We do propaganda too.
Yeah,
Every
I
country
mean,
does
Yeah, man,
propaganda.
it's weird.
It's how
We're
to
like,
take
man,
over the
Russians,
world.
Like,
So
Yeah.
when it's critical race theory nonsense, well, get out of here. Look,
you don't like
You
critical
know,
race theory?
who the hell came up with that term? Where'd that term come from?
Racism.
All right?
Who?
Racism.
You know, you need critical
Race theory. It's racism. Let's talk about racism.
Yes.
All right? What is it? How does it affect and inflict hurt upon both sides of the camp?
Yeah.
All right?
True.
Racism just doesn't affect people of color. It affects white people too.
Yeah.
And it's not even about the physical. It's about the psychological.
Yeah.
All right? There are people that think that they're better than us because of the hue of their skin, and they walk around with an illusion and don't understand when things don't go their way. Well, wait a minute. This is not supposed to happen to me, and they fail to understand when it comes down to it, this country is about dollars and cents. It's not about black and white. And if you're not with the people that have the money and are making the money, they don't care about another white person either.
But can I say something?
What
Officer Green?
about, what's so ironic about all this?
Yeah.
You get rich, I mean, if you're white, you get rich and you have lots of money and you go down to Florida and get a suntan and get my color. I mean,
Yeah.
what is that?
You see, but they can get
That
rid of that
show-
at any time they want.
But that shows, that
In
shows
time, it
envy and
fades,
jealousy.
you know
I've
what I mean?
always find racism is envy and jealousy. They're jealous of us, that we're so survival. I mean, we're so strong. I mean, I've got that when I was in the Marine Corps, boy. Everybody looked at me like, and this is in 1960, when I joined boot camp. Everybody's
Yeah.
looking at me. The other two black guys were headed for the big cooks. And I was the only one from New York, and I had a high GCT, and they were shocked to see I had.
GCT?
What was it? The intelligence quota in the
okay.
Marine Corps. At a high one in comparison to what I was amongst. I was smarter than most of those people.
So you're
I mean, I
75
was
with
this is
100 up there. Okay.
Marine Corps in 1960, January. I joined the Marine Corps, and everybody looked at me and said, "You got to be crazy."
That's not cool. Man. Those are our heroes. Thank you for your service, Gilchrist.
Yeah, you're
Thank
stupid
you.
enough to go grab a gun and go kill people. And they teach you how to do it.
Right.
But they brainwash you to being a proud American. I came out of boot camp with a stripe on my arm.
My
I was
rifle
so
is my
proud.
friend.
Oh, man, I remember marching past the Iwo Jima statue. I was first one in line. And no, only 3 people out of the 75 in the platoon got a PFC stripe. So I was one of those guys. I was a sharpshooter. They didn't think black people could shoot.
But okay. So with all this,
I'm
Mr.
saying
Gil-
all this, all the
Yeah.
generalizations
Yeah.
were
Right.
thrown upon me. The other 2 black guys in the platoon were overweight, and they were headed for the mess hall. And that's where they put most black people in those days.
in the mess hall.
Yeah, they were cooks.
Oh wow.
Especially in the
cooks.
Navy. You went to the Navy. That's
Yeah, in the
you were-
Marine Corps, you didn't have black Marines.
So you were safe then.
I mean, wherever I went, my whole 4 years, most of the time I was only black.
So wow. Wow.
Blacks were not allowed in the United States Marine Corps until 1942. There was no such thing as a black Marine prior to 1942, when they set up Montford Point. And, which reminds me, there's a memorial coming up Saturday to David and Joyce Dinkins. I wish I had brought the information with me. Gosh. It's going to be on Zoom, a 2-hour memorial. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring it with me because I wanted to give people the information. But David Dinkins went to Montford Point,
Yeah.
and
David
that's
Dinkins
where
was
the
a Marine.
first black Marines trained, and they built Montford Point.
Wow, David Dinkins was
They-
a Marine?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they didn't just come in the Marine Corps. They had to build their own barracks.
Yeah.
And it's across the water from Paris Island because black men were not allowed in Paris Island.
Yeah.
So here are people that want to serve a country that will not serve them.
Wow.
Yeah.
There were Marines that performed so well through the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, generals in the Marine Corps that have come through. And as a result, they've realized that when it comes down to it, the best troopers that they have are blacks.
Yeah, because you get gun-ho.
General Patton said that, too.
You know, I watched all the movies in the 50s, the John Wayne movies, and, you know, I joined in 1960. I was 18. I turned 19 when I got out of boot camp.
It starts making
in April. And so I had all this American spirit. You know, I remember the 50s, we had Eisenhower as president, a Republican.
So I want to ask, so if we're going to see what we can do to help the Haitian people, and so, because you're bringing up a good point about the mindset, right?
Yeah.
How can we discuss mindset without having a Western or white European mold for these Haitian people? How do we respect their culture, but also work in tandem to, like, allowing them to develop and to grow out of this state of attacking one another?
You've got to answer your own question, because you're the youth, and you've been successful, and you happen to have been fortunate enough to come up at a time when you don't understand what we're talking about when it comes to real racism, to real brainwashing. You know, see, the 40s, the 50s, when you were black, you were blessed if you were in New York.
Yeah. It was, you know, you brought such a great point. So, like, I was watching TV last night, you know, because I was preparing for the show, obviously. But I stayed up all night preparing for the show. No, I'm teasing. No. But I was watching this show called Charmed, and it was like 3 white women, and the whole cast was white, and they were all in this house. And I said, man, a show like that wouldn't exist right now, because every time I watch a TV show in 2021, there's at least one black person in that space. And so it just shows you how much we've progressed. I just wanted to kind of add that to your point.
Yeah, he's always in the 60s.
Yeah.
You had one black person in there. In the 50s,
but they were like the cook or serving. It was like no, like an essential character is African American.
Yeah, well, it's racism. In the 50s, you see even worse. I remember Nat King Cole touched.
Who
was that? Diana Shore.
Was it Dinah Shore? Dinah Shore?
Diana Shore on her show. Nat King Cole touched her hand, held her hand, and all the racist crackers had a fit.
His show was canceled because either he kissed a white woman on the cheek or she kissed him. And I remember that Nat King Cole.
Kiss her. He held her hand.
He just held her hand? Wow.
He touched her hand.
You know, but we were so proud to see Nat King Cole.
Yeah.
He had a black man with his own variety show.
Yeah.
And they canceled it. Just like that. All the sponsors pulled out.
But you know what happened? Someone that looked just like you changed it. Sidney Poitier came to dinner.
I remember that movie. A real gentleman.
That was a good one.
Awesome,
real
awesome,
gentleman.
Phil. He slapped the white officer. He
and you know what I liked about that movie? They gave him a decent-looking white woman. But she was cute.
I don't want to say nothing.
You know, most of the times they give you
was it
ugly
Spencer
dog.
Tracy? Spencer Tracy played the father. Spencer Tracy.
And
I don't remember who the mother was.
Well, that's when that's when you believe integration would work.
Was breaking.
Do you? Do you still believe integration works? Because you guys have grown up in the movement and you guys have seen it. Like, do you see that now? It's like, wow, like it works, man. Like
we lost too much. Integration. You know, my cousin signed a contract to play baseball.
Yeah.
And what my cousin did was historic, but it was detrimental because when Jackie signed that contract, that was the end of black business in sports. There were black men that owned sports stadiums that owned baseball teams, that had sold-out crowds coming to the Negro League games. And this is the thing, integration, even as Martin pushed for certain things for us in terms of equality, the focus was not on the economics, and we missed it. Because there were far more black businesses across this country in 1900 than there were in 2000 and even now. We lost the business acumen.
Yeah.
When we had to have our own barbers, our own grocers, our own carpenters, everything, we had our own, and our children had pride in who they were because they saw those black professionals everywhere. And even though they might have been segregated, they saw a principal who was black. They saw a doctor who was black. They saw a lawyer who was black. They saw credible black people. So there was no inferiority in their minds. As a result, remember Peg Leg Bates?
Yeah.
He had a place in Cahonkson, and he used to be on the Ed Sullivan Show a few times a year, and he would tap dance, and he had a peg leg. He had the only resort in the Catskills that black people could go to. With integration, they want to go to Browns and Neverly, and they stopped going to Peg Leg Bates' place. The place that sustained black people went out of business because black people failed to sustain their own business. They went about taking care of white people in their businesses. Their ice is no colder, the coffee isn't any hotter, but we see, again, it's about the thinking of the people.
Mindset.
And as a result, they understood, well, if we let them come into our business, we get their money. Have them come to our business, their businesses will collapse. And what do you have now? You have mega corporations. You don't have a local hardware store because everybody's running the Home Depot.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Officer Graham. So we were talking about this. I'm sorry, but we were talking about this while I was in Atlanta, and we were talking about the black economic power in Atlanta. And the thing is, I think when black people work, and I'm for like working with everybody, of course, but I think when there was a black economic base, and then we come from our businesses and we work with Walmart or we work with Coca-Cola. In Atlanta, there's a difference because there's a cemented level of economic power, and this is what I would say when we connect to the Haitian people, right? When we're in, because I think integration is a great analogy for if we would work with Haiti and build the people up there. We have to make sure that we give them economic empowerment. And we have to make sure that we help not give them, we help them to develop, because you can't give anyone anything. You have to develop economic empowerment, and you have to help them, empower them to have a strong democracy. But we have to respect their culture.
Right.
I mean, it's necessary, because if you take away a man's culture or woman's culture, they lose everything.
There's a book called Toxic
Charity. Let me bring back the
oof.
Haitians and what's happening now. Run item 2. This is at the Texas border and showing how they're being treated. And the Haitians have to solve their own problem of the gangs and the lawlessness in Haiti. There's nothing we can do about that. We got too many problems here.
Over 10,000 migrants are crammed underneath the international bridge here after crossing illegally into the United States.
All waiting in near 100-degree heat, washing clothes in the Rio Grande and sleeping outside for a chance to claim asylum.
And you can see right there, there's a weir dam out my right side, and they're just going back and forth to Mexico.
We are working around the clock to expeditiously move migrants out of the heat elements and from underneath this bridge to our processing facilities in order to quickly process and remove individuals from the United States consistent with our laws and our policies.
Why is it so painful?
Porque estamos sufriendo acá, estamos sufriendo.
Because you're suffering.
The majority of migrants continue to be expelled under CDC's Title 42 authority. Those who cannot be expelled under that authority and do not have a legal basis to remain will be placed in expedited removal proceedings.
I've seen some of the footage. I don't have the full context. I can't imagine what context would make that appropriate, but I don't have additional details. And certainly, I don't have additional context. April, I don't think anyone seeing that footage would think it was acceptable or appropriate.
Any mistreatment or abuse of a migrant is unacceptable, is against Border Patrol policy, training, and our department's values. Indeed, we have directed an investigation. That investigation is underway, and it will be conducted swiftly, and the public needs and deserves to know its results.
When you have tens of thousands of people and only hundreds of Border Patrol agents, it creates a very desperate situation.
I find the whole thing extremely troubling. And there's a long history of Haitian immigrants being treated differently than of others. Famously, Cubans and Haitians, the wet foot, dry foot policy. So Haitian immigrants have been treated differently than other migrants for decades. And this is the latest and most egregious example.
Images of Haitian migrants being hit with whips and other forms of physical violence is completely unacceptable. This behavior must be addressed, and we must provide accountability. The images turn your stomach. It must be stopped, this kind of violence.
Those individuals on horseback treating human beings the way they were is horrible. And I fully support what is happening right now, which is a thorough investigation into exactly what is going on there. But human beings should never be treated that way.
Now, what you see here is what's happening today. Now, this happened in September. But how did the Haitians, all of a sudden, now we've seen these problems on people coming to America illegally for years, and Mexicans and other foreigners, and this group of people, a lot of them escaped from Haiti or left Haiti after the earthquake. And a lot of them have been in South America for how many years? 10 years at least?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, 20,000 or how many, well, we had 13,000 under the bridge, and there's supposed to be more coming. Now, all of a sudden, they decide to come. Now, they wouldn't try this when Trump was president, that's for sure. Now, who encouraged them to come to America all of a sudden?
Well, I was talking with a young woman today at a production site uptown.
Mm-hmm.
She's a Latina. And she was explaining to me there are things happening in South America that we're not hearing about on the news because we don't get any news. We don't get news here. You get local news maybe, and you get the same stupidity about Trump and COVID. That's all they're talking about. In South America, there's a paradigm shift amongst the fact that people are disgruntled with the way the countries are being run and the economic conditions in the countries. Many of the Haitians were in Chile, a few in Argentina, but that's not a good place for dark-skinned people because the Nazis went to Argentina after the Second World War and brainwashed the Argentinians to think that they're white. So as the climate got hotter politically in a number of these countries, the Haitians had to leave. She said they had to leave in order to maintain safety and not be the scapegoat for the economic conditions. Because, you know, when things go bad, they start blaming it on this group. Like, for instance, people say, oh, they're taking our jobs. You know, they were saying that about the Mexicans. They're doing the work that white people aren't going to do, so how are they taking your job? But many of the Haitians left Peru, Chile, Argentina, and started moving up through South America into Central America. But the thing is that this was like a sudden, you know, all of a sudden people were at the border.
I think the Republicans are behind it.
The Republicans are not in South America moving people around. They have their own conditions.
Don't you know Trump is behind half this stuff?
Listen, don't give credit to an ass. Hee-haw, hee-haw. Stop it. Let's stop giving credit to an idiot.
Russians.
the conditions in some of these countries, and again, unless you read and follow certain media sources, you're not going to know. You don't get international news in New York. If you're looking at any of the major networks, you don't get international news. So you have to go off of these networks, NBC and CNN. They don't cover
BBC.
international news.
Just go to BBC.
You know, you've got to go to BBC. You might have to watch Democracy Now!, which is great with Amy Goodman. She's always covering stuff on the international circuit and talking with people on the ground in these countries. And she's bringing information that we don't get.
So, I'm sorry, I was here.
But I mean, basically, people don't even want to know anything. What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, for instance, like, I watch a lot of international news because my mom from Honduras, so we watch Univision all the time.
All right.
What
do you watch?
Univision, or like there's like Univision, or we watch like some stuff from like Chile. Watch it from like Chile, and just seeing the levels of violence.
Spanish.
Yeah. So seeing the levels of violence that are going on in the countries, you know, it's so extreme. Like, I mean, my tia, she's in America. She has refugee status. My cousin Jose came to America because in Honduras, like, he had a metal plate in his chest, and he couldn't afford treatment in Honduras, and it was killing him. In the U.S., it was free. So these people are, my people, right? Our people are coming here for a lot of really, really strong reasons, and you know, some of them are undocumented, yes, and you know what? I think we should really look at these people as humans. Should we open our borders completely to everyone that comes by? No, we can't afford it. But should we ignore and even go as far as to whip them when they come? No. There has to be some nice middle ground where we take it case by case by case and really look at them as human beings and understand, are they really in danger? I think that's necessary. Because Officer Graham, Mr. Gilchrist, I'm hearing the stories, people that are coming here across the border. A majority of them are from Honduras. They come on a train, okay? They will sit on the top of the train, Mr. Gilchrist. If this speed train falls, they die. They go through the waters and the rivers. Some of them drown. These little kids drown, and they die in the water. They're going through with these gangs. Sometimes the gangs take the women and the children and make them sex slaves on the road here. So when we're like, oh man, they just got to stop coming. Something must be going on real bad for you to
want to. I fingerprinted a man years ago, back in the 80s. He was from Afghanistan. And I'm fingerprinting him for his immigration. He came to the command to be printed. He told me he was from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It's winter. He had on a sports jacket.
Yeah.
He didn't have a winter coat. He said to me, I will never get rid of this coat. He said it kept me alive crossing the mountains.
Yeah,
he spoke of what the Russians were doing to the Afghan people in the 80s. And he said he had to travel through the winter at night, because if they saw him on the ground, he would have been shot. So he had to move at night with a sports jacket. That's all he had on his back. He said that jacket barely kept him alive, but he would never get rid of that jacket. And you know what his profession was in Afghanistan?
Well, he was probably a doctor.
He was a doctor.
Yeah.
And he was working in a newsstand in Manhattan.
Yeah, that's how it goes, man.
And happy to be here.
See, we don't know what people, just as you said, we don't know what people are going through. There was a 5-year-old girl that had a tumor growing out of her eye. I remember seeing her some years ago. There's a group called Leaf for Life in Brooklyn. And they helped get this 5-year-old girl, and I went to the hospital to see her, and this grotesque tumor outside of her eyeball. There was no eye.
Yeah, man.
Downstate. And they did surgery on the girl, but they couldn't get it all out because they're dealing with the eye. She lost the eye, but also it started going into the brain. We went to Chuck Schumer, and he got her airlifted here to get the surgery. And the mother came with her. They could not save this girl. The mother begged that the father could get here to see his child before she died. Immigration and Naturalization Services say, oh, these people just want to come here because they want to work and make money. What in God's name is going on in your head when a 5-year-old child is dying from brain cancer and the father is in another country and you talk about they think this is a joke?
Yeah, you know how long it takes to get citizenship in America? The process is so bad. It takes years to get citizenship. You know how much it cost? About $10,000 to get some citizenship.
We brought people here from Russia. They got food stamps. They got
They got the whole nine.
They got Social Security. You didn't have to work a day. They got full Social Security benefits. They don't work. They never paid taxes. And people that live here can't get the benefits they got. Then a guy was telling me his wife uses her EBT card when she's in Israel. So she's buying food in Israel.
That's Putin.
You know?
Putin and again.
Putin was not in office when they brought all these people here from
Well,
Russia.
he was running the CIA of Russia.
Mr. Gilchrist, you can't do. How are you doing this?
Stop giving credit unnecessarily
Because
and erroneously.
that's what you're all going to discover, what's behind all this stuff.
You know how to. You just. Wow.
You see the Russians. Watch the Russians. They started this whole mess.
Yeah, South Brooklyn voted for Donald Trump. All the
South
Russians
Brooklyn.
in South
All the
Brooklyn.
Russians,
Down in Brighton Beach, they all voted for Donald Trump. They
don't
love him.
I used to call him. Used to call Trump Putin's bee. You remember that?
He be Putin's bee.
Putin's bee. That's what he's doing now. He owes them more money.
There's no way you're putting Putin back. I don't know how you're doing this. How are you putting Putin in immigration?
Who's behind all this garbage. Don't you know he's behind the whole thing?
He's probably done.
He's the one that put what's his
Nikita
name?
Khrushchev
Trump?
said, "We will."
How did Trump get into the office of presidency? Through Putin's help.
Okay, so the 4 years I can give, but how are you going to bring Putin
What's
to
happening
immigration?
now? He's still claiming to be president. You know how many 74 million people believe him?
Well, some people think they're smart too.
Look at what's happening with the January 6th. Look at the fight that's happening today. We got to struggle with what we need to do for ourselves here in America, and pay attention to what the Russians are doing, and Putin and Trump.
And the
of all
Americans.
things. And power to the people. The God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned for more anti-Russian. Putin needs to. All right? God bless. To Manhattan. I got another minute for the Bronx. Gentlemen?
Right.
30 seconds. Not
If
a whole
this
story.
country doesn't wake up, if our government doesn't wake up,
There you go.
we're down the drain
That's right.
in 2024.
2022.
22 and 24.
'Cause
All right?
that's all we need them to control the House.
The
and
handwriting
we in
is on the
trouble.
wall.
You have to realize the House is only eight. We've got a majority of 8 to 10 in the House.
Well, they better start doing
Now, if they
something
get
like
the-
their
if we
life
don't get
depends
the-
upon it, because
the
they're not
Voting
doing it.
Rights Act in there, we're going to be in big trouble.
That's right.
We have the Russians living in every.
Oh man.
Don't worry about the Russians.
Power to the people. God bless. Stay tuned for more, and we'll give you documented proof of the Russian influence.
He sounds like the guy's doing the ballots. I got proof. The